For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. So I'm giving you guys a bit of an advice video about how to rectify a problem that I do see a lot on social media of beams bowing. Now, more often than not, it tends to be probably with either the front or the back beams or potentially all the beams. Now, it's not something that's necessarily normally wrong with the actual tent itself. Sometimes it's just down to the way it's been pitched. This can be down to numerous kind of reasons, and it's kind of going through the checklist I'm going to sort of go through now and sort of trying to work out whether it's one of these things or could be a factor of all of these. You know, there are genuine reasons why it misshapes. So, first and foremost is I would always recommend that make sure that it's been fully pegged out on the width and the sort of beam will sit in the natural position. By having this point too far in, what you're trying to do is almost kick the hip out, hence why you got this kind of angle and bend, which obviously it's not natural for the tent to sit in. And also what you find essentially weakens it because it wants to sort of bow and flex more because it's not in its structural stable position. So by also making sure that the base is quite firmly pied out, even just by a little bit of that will certainly help it. If you're still getting the same issue like I am here, it could be down to another few reasons. So one thing of being actually if the pegging point on the sides, the guy ropes are pegged too tight, yet again, you're kind of forcing that shape out of its position. Now, certainly by slacking off, that's really going to help quite a bit. So let's do that, because really the guy ropes aren't meant to be like whipping the tent down. They're really there more as an aid, as it's not pulling the tent this way, it's stopping the tent moving that way. So by loosening that off, that again is going to help a little bit. With guy ropes, really is rule of thumb, they do slacken off a little bit, but if you just go a little bit tight, so you've got a bit of play to it. You can see how much play there really is. Like I said, all they're really doing is stopping the tent from moving it any further that way, not ripping it and pulling it towards that way, so to speak. Yet again, it's looking a lot better already, but what we'll do is we'll carry on through the checks to make sure that there's nothing else is going wrong. Now naturally, I said at the start of the video, it's normally the front or the back beam. This reason is really because it's where the amount of force is being put on the beam or the fabric. The joys of the ones in the middle is really the fabric's just going along the straight part, so there's nothing really trying to force it down or out of shape in any way. With the front and back beams, what you find is yet again, because the fabric's naturally pulling it down, there is a certain amount of weight being forced down, which makes it more sort of prone to kind of twisting or moving or, you know, misshaping really. So what you tend to find is normally I would also check the pressure you're putting inside a tent, and typically it's not uncommon to maybe increase it by 1 or 2 psi at the front and back, because there's more strain under that particular part than the rest of the tent itself. So with something like a Vango tent, generally what Vango recommends is about 7 psi, and in a green zone you can go up to 8. In our display ones sometimes we go up to a little bit more, so sort of even sort of up to 9 psi, just to give it that much more beefness. Obviously regulate that with the temperature, so if there certainly is a cold day and it suddenly gets hot, just monitor it. It's not really much of an issue, the beams should be capable to hold that, but really it's just that extra bit of thing, and it's no different you can't use certainly for tents which have a heavier weight fabric. So if you've got a polycotton tent, it's even more important that you make sure it's the right PSI and it's pitched correctly, because yet again, as with anything, there's more weight in the fabric, more weight on the beams, and it's going to again try and distort it up to its possibilities. Other things that possibly could be misshaping the beam not only is down to the side guy ropes, but it's the back guy ropes. If these are coming directly down, yet again, as I said before, you're forcing that tube to go down. So really, yeah, again, I find with the front and back guy ropes, slacking that off, what you're playing for is torsioning the roof, not torsion on the back. So I, as a rule of thumb, like to have my guy ropes nice and wide, nice and long. That way you're pulling out rather than pulling down. So again, yeah, you can see the angle that it's gone down. So you've sort of a much more steady angle rather than forcing it directly down. So we'll do that with both of these again. And what also is it really helps to open that mesh vent up at the back as well. So as you can see, the fabric sits a bit nicer around here. We'll tweak this pegging point a little bit just to get a bit more tension in it. Now, if everything I've said so far is not necessarily working, I'm not ruling out the possibility that there is an issue with the tent. What the final thing, and it can be as well, is maybe when the tent's been packed down and put up again, or even when it's been brand new, the internal sort of sleeve that sits in the tent and sort of houses the back, sort of the inflatable tube, may have shifted. So if that's not central, what you might find is there's more sort of tube on one side than there is the other. Yet again, misshaping that as well. So what we normally tend to do is just go inside and see if it's all centralized, or if need be, give it a little tug from one side to another. So let's have a little walk in on the inside and just see how about you'd go about that. So let's have a look. So now we're inside the tent, you can kind of get a bit more of an idea of what things might happen. So not only can the beam actually sort of misshape itself on the width, but also it might find that the beam is actually twisted as well. Yet again, it all could be down to just the fact that the actual sleeve is just misshapen in the actual tent as well. What things you can do, so all the beams are kind of removable, and we've done our own sort of video about how to remove a beam, or if you need to repair a beam as well. Now all you've got located really is a zip in the tent, which holds the bladder and the sleeve in the tent completely. So that is located just there, you see. One thing I'll do, if you're ever trying to manipulate a little bit, if you can't do it when the beam's fully inflated, just take a little bit of air out of it. It makes it easier just to kind of push around as you want it to. Now what you might find is something like with this one here, if it sort of sits in the shape and we've got, say, too much room on that side, it's just making sure that it's sort of centralized. There's an even amount of weight going across both. And what you can also do as well is actually just re-velcro the pad on the outside. So what sits at the bottom of the beams is just a velcro pad. If that's not sitting perfectly on the pad, that can also, like if we've done here, is just kink the beam out a little bit. So by deflating that, just make it a bit more pliable, you can quite happily, or if need be, completely remove from the pad, reposition, or sometimes need to actually rotate it around the right way. A lot of people necessarily think that the zip needs to match up with the zip on the actual sleeve. That's not actually the case. You can find it twists a little bit, but as long as the main body still looks, you know, all dead in line and still looks pucker, it's not a problem. There's no need to worry about it. But like I said, what you can do is, again, is just twist that beam, but actually remove it from the Velcro like this. Rotate it, and again, when it's a little less air in, makes it a little bit easier, and then pop it on there. So you can kind of pull and tug it as you need to. So again, if you find it needs to go kind of a bit more that way, by deflating it and sort of shifting, holding the actual tent itself, you can actually kind of move the beam a little bit more that way, just to kind of reposition it. Personally, I'm a bit anal sometimes, and I like to find that the double zip runners are located in the middle, and that kind of gives me a nice guide point that I know that it's bang in the middle. Generally, it's not always happen, it's just me being quite particular, really. Right, Arch. There you go. But yeah, that kind of gives you a bit more idea. And once you've kind of realigned it, you can re-inflate it to full pressure, and it's something that can be done over and over again. It's not uncommon once you sort of replace a beam or repair the beam that you might actually go through this process. Like I said, when things get packed down constantly, there's a good chance that that part of the actual sleeve is sort of moving in the tent. Same with the roof. Sometimes you might find if you've got a crease in the roof or something like that, it's just a case that this part here is sitting wrong. So you just might need to give it a little bit of a pull one way or pull the other. Just the fact that that's where you get some extra saggage. So there's variable different factors to it why you might be having an issue with there. But of course, if you go back to where essentially the retailer you bought it from, like with us, just contact us on our email address or our phone number, and even sending a lot of external photos of it and internal photos of it just allows us to see maybe where someone's going wrong in relation to not having it, maybe not having it correctly pitched or bowing it, or like I said, generally you can occasionally have honest manufacturing defaults, which is not, uncommon sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of a little video about it. by all means, check the link below to all of our spares and repairs and contact us directly if you have any more questions or queries about these particular issues. But thanks for watching. This has been Attwoolls Outdoors, and we hope to see you again.